Hello and welcome to this episode of Nothing Ventured with me, Aarish Shah. Today, I had with me in the studio Jay Gujral. Jay is a repeat founder, angel investor, and blockchain native operator who spent the last decade at the intersection of emerging tech, data, integrity, and startup ecosystems. His journey started with Gradlancer, a student freelance marketplace spun out of university that caught enough attention to be acquired in the early days of the graduate data economy. Since then, he's built a reputation for backing and building early stage ventures with teeth, notably helping shape the next wave of blockchain innovation through his work at Blockdojo, the UK's leading blockchain incubator. Now he's back in founder mode with Record, a platform designed to bring bulletproof trust to business data. Think blockchain without the hype, offering plug-and-play data integrity to anyone managing sensitive or high-value records, whether it's compliance auditability or just making sure someone can't screw with your contracts after the fact. Jay's betting that the future of digital trust won't require an on-chain PhD to implement. In today's episode, we talk about how Web3 is a bunch of smart technical people trying to force solutions onto perceived world problems, how the missing piece in blockchain is adoption, and how AI needs a system of record, which is where blockchain comes into its own.
What they need now is proof that the images that are being sent to them are real, because the images are being taken by the satellites. They could easily be manipulated by AI, by anything.
What founders get wrong in the early days trying to build too big, and how becoming the verifiable data stack at Record might lead to them becoming a data standard.
If it becomes a data standard, then especially in this new world of AI, then we're into something pretty incredible.
Ideating Gradlancer whilst on a sandwich year at Lenovo, and how emerging fund managers are going to struggle in the current market.
I think that money is going in places it knows it can actually make a return now, rather than go down a more risky route.
Whether or not we're seeing the rise of community-led investing, and Jay's contrarian opinion.
Consistency is the key to everything.
Let's get straight into it. Hey guys, whilst I've got you for a second, I thought I'd just reintroduce myself. My name's Aarish. I'm the host of Nothing Ventured, the podcast where I talk to the people behind the stories that make the venture ecosystem go round. I'm also the founder of Emerge One, a consultancy that provides fractional CFO support to venture-backed tech startups from seed to Series B and beyond. If you enjoy the podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could rate, subscribe, and like wherever you listen, whether that's YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. And if you have anything you want to say to me, or even a guest that you'd like to recommend, do reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm always up for a bit of a natter. Right, let's get straight into it. Jay, really great to have you in the studio. Very excited to be doing this. It's been a year in the making, I think, if not more, but welcome.
Longer. Yeah. I think we were looking at starting our, two-man Desi podcast.
Two Brown Boys. Yeah. I did set up a business called
Yeah.
Two Brown Boys at one stage. Maybe we can flip you out. It has a really cool logo. Maybe we'll do that actually, but we'll see how you go on this. And then I'll see whether you can be invited on again. But look, let's dive straight in, right? I want to talk to you about blockchain without the buzzwords, right? And why data integrity is the real use case. So everyone's heard of blockchain. Most, including me, can't or won't explain why it matters, or haven't quite grokked, I guess, why it is essential in some instances. And I think, a lot of people that I've spoken to, or even in my own thinking, when you look at a lot of the blockchain solutions that have been proposed over the last decade, let's call it, you have to ask yourself, why was this better on the blockchain? Why could this not have been done, on Web 2, if I can put it that way? But you've described Record as a way to bulletproof business data. So can you unpack what that really means, and why blockchain isn't just crypto with a few extra steps?
I think that there's a lot there, and with what you're trying to understand is trying to understand, like, say, what Bitcoin was to start with, and then why Ethereum rocked up, and then what Solana is. Like, there's so many different layers to it, like layer ones, layer twos, and then side chains and whatever else. There's a lot to unpack.
Which is one of the reasons why it hasn't been as widely adopted, I guess, outside kind of tech circles, because people just don't get it.
And this is kind of the issue with what Web3 has become, is it's a load of very, very smart technical people trying to force a solution to real world problems, and forcing a solution to how they perceive real world problems. And that's been an issue, and still is an issue massively right now. Like, you've got businesses like Eigenlayer, or projects like Eigenlayer, for example, tackling restaking. And if I say restaking to you and a
I'm
project
like,
called
what are you talking
Eigenlayer
about?
talking about
Yeah,
restaking
I'm
and
like,
raising 30, 40 million doing restaking, you're going to go, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Because it's solving a problem that is a problem for the crypto industry right now. It's not for, addressing the adoption or mass adoption of what crypto is and what Web3 is.
Yeah.
Essentially what Web3 is just, as everyone will know, decentralization. It's moving away from the Metas, the Microsofts, all those intermediaries. That's all it is.
All the banks.
All the banks, getting a load of developers to build on top of these layers of chains, blockchains, the protocols. And a load of developers create some cool, amazing stuff, but making it super easy for the end user to actually use the product or the solution.
But therein lies the rub, right? So two things that come out of that. First of all, do they need to be decentralized? So that's a fundamental question. Like, is there a need to move away from these centralized institutions? And you could argue yes or no, depending on how you look at it. The second question is, like, you want to make it adoptable for everyone, but part of the problem is that it's not, because it is so complex. Like if Auntie Shah, like if you told her, look, this blockchain solution is going to make your life a lot easier, she's going to look at you like you're absolutely crazy. Right?
But this is where the blockchain, this is actually a nice segue into what Blockdojo is and what we were trying to build there.
Yeah.
Blockdojo was there to build Web 2.5 solutions.
Yeah, so you weren't just chasing tokens.
No, we didn't build any token projects, nothing like that. And that was the point. Like, we didn't want that to be a thing in the dojo. What we wanted was Web 2 businesses with founders with deep like sector experience building projects that had like Web 3 rails. Yeah. That was it.
Real world applications on Web 3 rails.
But if you were to use any of the projects, you'd never know they were built.
Got it.
There were crypto or blockchain solutions. You'd never know that. And that was the whole point. Like, and that's why we wanted to build them. Because we're like, this is then focusing on the piece that I think a lot of people are missing, which is the adoption piece. Like mass market adoption can only get there if you actually build in a way that, like you just said, like your auntie, your mum, your dad actually understand. Otherwise, what's the point? Otherwise you're building for a 0.01% market that doesn't, fine, you can be a god in those circles, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. So again, like, let's unpack this a bit further, right? Because, 10 years ago I think it's 10 years ago, maybe it was like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever. But, there was obviously a big kind of belief that blockchain was the new platform, right? Like, if I can put it that way, and that's maybe reductionist, but I think there was a lot of, there was a lot of excitement and exuberance that, okay, well, Bitcoin is going to take over money. But what we're seeing today in the markets, right, where Bitcoin should be flowing contrary to market, it's actually going with the market. So it kind of it doesn't feel like it's decoupled in the way that people thought it would be, right? But regardless of that, you had all of this exuberance and a lot of promise. Then you went into this phase of like really batshit stuff like NFTs. We were talking about this earlier, right? And obviously, as you said, lots of meme coins, and you've got Dogecoin and shit coins and Trump coin, whatever, right? And then actually over the last few years, and it feels like kind of just after the NFT rush, blockchain as a thing kind of, you don't hear about it as much. And you've had obviously some high profile cases, Sam Bankman-Fried and so on, where, things have not gone the way that one would have hoped and anticipated, and obviously some fraudulent sort of stuff happening as well. And it feels like blockchain and Web3 and crypto, and I'll kind of use, Web3 to capture all three of those elements, even though there are kind of distinct parts to them, have all been colored and tarred with the same brush. And it feels like that whole ecosystem has a bit of a marketing problem more than anything else. Yeah. And then has also been sort of superseded by obviously the exuberance around AI at the moment, right? So it felt like, okay, blockchain was a thing, it didn't prove itself out. Okay, here's AI, and actually that's the new promise, and that's where the world is heading. I think there is an argument that, again, to your point, if you can find those solutions of the real world applications, Web3, blockchain, etc., comes back, because now it has the time to actually figure its shit out rather than kind of just being there, and in the domain of techies only. Yeah,
well, the thing is with blockchain and what it's become, like if you look at it, what market cap wise, it's probably as of today around 2.6 trillion. That's one NVIDIA. Like realistically, if the crypto ecosystem was to die tomorrow, it's a blip on the financial roadmap. Yeah. Like, or the roadmap of the global markets is nothing really. there's a huge amount of legs in it. It's all about how now, like you talk about marketing and how badly it's been marketed, because the thing is right now, the crypto community is almost like just marketing to itself.
Yeah.
It's all about the internal community that's
Echo
building.
chambers of Discord channels.
It's echo chambers. It's like geeing everyone up that's building really cool stuff that, you know, a select group of people actually understand. Fine, that's great. But at some point you need to think outside of that ecosystem, like who are we actually targeting now? What's being built now that's gonna change the world? And then you look at what blockchain can actually do. When you look at stable coins, when you look at what we're doing at Record and things like that, then it starts to make a lot more sense. But this is where, so you're talking about AI and how AI is this new hot thing and all that sort of stuff. And crypto does get a bad rap because of meme coins and NFTs and whatever, which still have use cases like NFT ticketing. And there's all sorts of things that are still actually relevant to, you know, but they were put into the world in a really poor way.
Yeah.
But
so it's again, marketing that
it's been done really badly, but it's a land grab. It's people realizing they can make a load of money and, you know, you're going to get cowboys everywhere. Like, of course you are. But this is where, with AI, I now think that, it's not now, like I've thought this for a while. I think that the intersection of AI and blockchain, I didn't realize like 2 years ago that AI would come along this quickly, to be honest. I don't think many people did, but then it's
not in the way it has. And I think the only reason it has, I mean, like in my mind, is because the thing that OpenAI did that made AI accessible was making it accessible via a chat interface, right?
Yeah.
Like otherwise it was the domain of data scientists, right? Which is not the majority of the world. But if you can actually just chat, like I think about it from the perspective of my wife, who is, you know, studying interior design, doing a degree in interior design, like she's not English native speaker, you know, she hasn't studied for the last 30 years or whatever. Like ChatGPT, she's now become, you know, I wouldn't say she's a power user, right? But like she understands how to use it, how to get the information that she needs out of it. Like this would have been it would have been, well, I wouldn't say that for sure. But it would have been unimaginable like 5 years ago that sort of power would be in her hands. But it literally is only because of the interface. Like I think without that interface, like, you know, if you think about OpenAI today, if it was only built around APIs, like then
it's completely different.
Yeah.
But this is where, like I was saying, with the end section of AI and blockchain is massive, because AI is now, it's got the ability to make its own decisions, or will have the ability to make its own decisions. We realize that AI can hallucinate, AI can make bad decisions, AI can do all sorts of things. You got to remember the version of AI that we get as consumers as well is very different to probably what military grade AI could be, or, you know, government grade AI could actually be. But with that, you then need proof that you just need to be able to have a ledger. I'll just use that phrase, a ledger of all the decisions that AI is making. And the only way to do that, in my eyes, is having it all on chain, because the second a decision is made, it's locked and it's tamper proof.
So explain this to me, right? So we talked about this earlier. Why could that not be done on a Web 2 platform?
Because it's cryptographically locked. Right. So you can't change the hash, you can't change any of the data.
So someone could go into a Web 2
you can go
database and change things around, essentially.
Humans could do it.
Yeah,
the AI could do it. Yeah, the AI itself could go in and make the changes. So there's then there are quantum proof like applications coming out and all that sort of stuff when quantum computing, you know, arrives, whenever that's going to be. But
5 years, 10 years, or 100 years.
God knows when that actually happens. But that's
sooner than we think, probably.
Exactly. That's always one of those things. But this is where we're taking blockchain back to what it was meant to be: tamper-proof, like an auditable log,
a system of record.
That's it, and that's all we want for AI now, and that's what we're going to need. Like, I don't know if I can go into this now. This case study, shall I call it, for Record? But we've been talking to a couple of satellite imaging companies, some of the biggest in the world, and what they are now seeing they're going to need for trading houses that want to trade off satellite imaging data, for example, like for oil refineries, for shale well pads in the Permian, which is stuff that I worked on back in my McKinsey days. What they need now, or these trading houses needed, is proof that the images that are being sent to them are real, because the images being taken by the satellites, they could easily be manipulated by AI, by anything.
Okay, I had the light bulb moment.
Yeah.
So just as you were talking, sorry to interrupt. I know I keep interrupting, but it's because I'm learning stuff, which is always a fun is always a fun pod for me, right? So yeah, 100%. Like, how do you ensure that video of Melania is true, of that picture of the Pope is correct? Like how, like, and given that we're entering this world where misinformation is already a problem, actually being able to audit and verify without question, right? With absolute trust becomes incredibly powerful, because to your point, markets can move on this stuff. And if bad data is coming out because AI, either someone is manipulating AI to produce data, or the AI itself somehow is manipulating data, then you live in a world where you can't make decisions because you don't know what to trust.
Yeah, it's very dystopian, but it's like, there's what was the BBC drama that came out about like CCTV and AI scrubbing CCTV cameras? And
it's a great.
I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but it was brilliant.
It'll come to me.
That, for example, like is actually not that far away now, realistically. And look, I'm not saying that blockchain is the ultimate solution to this just yet, because there's still a lot of stuff to figure out. Like there is the shit in, shit out, problem where what you put in and what you log is only as good as, what as that, right? What comes out is only as good as what you put in.
Yeah.
So there is the whole thing of and the reason for building record was it takes the data at the point it is logged, at the point. So the second that AI is making that decision, it's logged. The second that the satellite image is taken, it's logged. So you know that that's the image that has been used and it hasn't been manipulated. And you can reference that with the hash. Like, full well that is that image. This is where it starts to get really, really interesting for what we're doing, because there's no one else doing that right now. And it's probably the most basic use case of what the blockchain is actually meant to be.
Yeah. It's where it should have started.
Yeah, but then it kind of went down a different route.
It's going to do my head in, because I actually just recently rewatched that.
Yeah.
And it's oh god. Oh, it's going to bug me. I'm gonna have to. I'll have to come back to this afterwards. But again, like so when I was thinking about blockchain in the early days, like the obvious use cases for me were systems of record, and because I lived in like developing economies, the obvious one for me was, and like we'd been in disputes, like I was living in Papua New Guinea, we owned title to a piece of land. Yeah. There was a squatter on the land. They'd gone, paid off a minister and had got a separate title, which was clearly like fake, but then you're stuck in courts for the next 30 years. The capture. That's sorry, God, the capture. Do watch it. It's on BBC One iPlayer. It's a bloody good series.
It is brilliant.
Right. Sorry, that was going to do my head in.
Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. So, but the obvious thing for me is, okay, well, you put all of those titles on chain, all of a sudden you remove that issue and you have a clear record. Now, yes, people might dispute things down the track or whatever, but at least you start from a starting point where that is an immutable record of what is there, right? And someone else spoke to me about digital IDs or cryptographic IDs. So again, if you are nomadic or a refugee or whatever, like here's one way that actually you could verify and prove your identity if all of your identities are
and that's one of the businesses that came through Blockdojo.
Interesting.
A Ukrainian founder who wanted digital IDs, like just proof of like where you've come from. Yeah, like
this is my property.
Exactly, all of that sort of stuff to prove that if you are seeking asylum, whatever, like you've got something to show.
Yeah. So actually, let's talk about Blockdojo, because you mentioned a couple of times, right? So you were deep in the weeds there, but what like given everything we've just talked about, what's the biggest thing that early stage builders got wrong about Web3 or blockchain based businesses, and what was your playbook at the dojo for filtering kind of signal from noise?
I think for me, it's founders don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think that's what we saw a lot is founders coming in thinking they need to build this brand new business and make it the best thing that's targeting a certain area or certain niche. Like it doesn't always need to be that. I think that sometimes if you know something really well and you want to make it slightly better, focus on that for me, because like, look at, I don't know, like let's just say Monzo, Revolut, like technically the same technology. They're both using MasterCard. Like it's nothing different. All they've got are different interfaces.
Yeah, it's a different wrapper on the same product.
It's a different wrapper on the same product, and that's what it is. Like you don't need to overthink it. You don't need to overthink what you're doing, and that's what we tried to give those founders. But what we wanted, like I said, is like founders with sector knowledge, deep sector knowledge. Then we'd give them the blockchain knowledge. So we had our investors, Enchain, they would give us blockchain developers who'd come in and do the work. Then we'd give the founders designers. So we'd then build out the like all the Figmas, all the MVPs, all the websites, the logos, everything for the founders. Then we'd do commercial sessions with them. Like now let's go get
how do you monetize? Yeah,
but let's also get some letters of intent. Like let's actually go pitch this. Like is this actually needed if you're targeting B2B? If you're targeting consumers, can we go out and do like 100 consumer surveys? Just things like that we'd really fast track them through a process in 12 weeks. And then at the end of it, we'd bring in a pitch coach to do like on-stage pitch training, like an acting coach.
Yeah, I never actually made it to some of the sessions. But actually, so one of the things you just said there, I think is super important, right? And I think this actually traverses, I mean, it isn't a blockchain only problem or a Web3 only problem, right? Which is founders often wanting to kind of solve the world.
Yeah.
Right, rather than one thing really well.
Yeah.
Because again, one of the thoughts that I had for blockchain, like coming from my background, I was like, well, okay, if you could put the entire accounting kind of system on chain, well, all of a sudden you've got trusted, verifiable data. You know, need for audit kind of falls away in the way that it is, and potentially you have interactions between between institutions or between companies.
Well, that's what Dojo wants to do, isn't it? Like having I mean, Doge is in the US.
Oh, as in
what Elon was doing. Yeah, in terms of having all government transactions on chain so that it can be verified and everyone has a public access to what's actually going on. Because until they got into the weeds of it, it seemed pretty crazy what they were spending money on.
A bit nebulous. I mean, I kind of stopped tracking what Doge was doing after a little while. But yeah, I mean, like that to me, makes sense. But equally, like, if you think about that, okay, what am I proposing? I'm proposing reinventing accounting and double entry bookkeeping and changing the way that businesses, record transactions. Like that's a pretty fucking large problem to try and go out and solve.
It's never going to happen. Where do you start? Where do you start? Like,
exactly.
And that's where
who do you get to adopt? And unless you need at least two to adopt, but you actually need everyone to adopt simultaneously
for it to make sense.
Yeah,
and that's it. Like open banking, you're basically like saying it's going to become open accounting. Like I get it.
Yeah.
Realistically, there's not a lot of people that want their account seen as well.
Yeah,
like
there is that.
there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that and this is exactly what you're saying. Like you go in with such a, and I have so many issues with people that come in with like huge company visions and blah blah blah, like
idealistic.
Fine.
Yeah.
They're great. You want to change the world in 10, 15, 20 years. Brilliant. What are you going to do in year one? What are you going to do in year two?
You have to get to 15 years from now to be able to do that.
It never ever gets there. You start a business and by year one it's pivoted. So because you're following a market, like you're following a market that's buying your business. If it's not buying your business, you're not going to continue down that route. Like no sane founder is going to continue because they're going to run out of capital. They're going to run out of, emotional capacity. They're going to run out of drive, everything, if they realize that no one's actually buying into what they're doing. So if you don't have that endless pot of cash to keep on with your idealistic, approach to a business, you're going to pivot. So why build out, the 10-year vision? I mean, I get it. You build out a 10-year roadmap or a 10-year vision, but you've got to know it can like in the dojo in 12 weeks, we had businesses pivoting by week 4.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's, it just shows that these,
but it's normal, right?
But we're bringing in founders who've got like so hell bent on producing what they want to produce from before they came into the dojo. They come in and by week 4 they've pivoted.
Well, that's testament to the dojo, I guess, because like I know lots of founders like that, right? Like hell bent, very tunnel vision, blinkers on. Like, no, this is the problem.
Yeah,
this is the problem, or not even that. This is the solution. But where the fuck's the problem?
But it's not even. I agree with that. This is the solution, but to a problem that they've seen.
That's what I'm saying.
But it's not a problem that they've validated.
Yeah, that everyone needs. I mean, like, and I've done it myself, right? Like, I've built a product based on, yeah, actually, this is a problem that I think needs to be solved. And I was like, oh shit. When I actually tried to get it out into the market, I was like, well, turns out, it's a problem, but it's not a problem that people want to pay for.
Yeah, that's
which is kind of it's a big deal.
Yeah, you need people paying for it.
Yeah, it's a shame, but like sadly, business works that way. Yeah. So you've also said that Record gives businesses a way to kind of prove their data hasn't been tampered with, and that could be contracts, could be transactions, could be other sensitive records. You talked about images and so on and so forth. So where does this go? So to your point, right? Like, okay, what is that 10, 20-year vision? Because could this be the kind of verifiable data, or could this kind of verifiable data become part of the standard compliance or risk stack in a few years? Or is that what you're aiming for?
So as you would have seen yesterday, my title changed from commercial director to head of ecosystem. And then that was very, there was a good reason for that. Not some of it I can't go into right now, but there's a reason we're doing it, and we're focusing more on building out Record into more of a Web3 business that we know it can be, because no one else, like I said, is doing what we're doing right now. You've got Filecoin, you've got Protocol Labs, which is doing on-chain storage, file storage, very different to every transaction from IoT data or from anything being logged to the second. So it's very, very different. But in terms of what it can be, I don't know if James is going to let me say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. We're looking at...
It's too late.
Yeah, I know. We're looking at what we're trying to do, and what we are down the road of having these discussions is Record becoming a standard. So we're talking to like ISO associations, whatever, about Record actually becoming a data standard as well. Because if it becomes a data standard, then we're into, especially in this new world of AI, then we're into something pretty incredible.
Yeah. I mean, and again... So if I think about this sort of a bit further, so I think about let's take education as an example, right? Like education is brilliant, right? And ubiquitous and is now available, right? But what lots of people found when they started building edtech businesses is that, right, you can give the education, but so what? Without the certification, it's meaningless, right? And again, it comes back to that kind of trust element where someone needs a piece of paper that says, this is the standard by which you are.
Well, I've done enough of them. I've done Udemy courses and I've done all sorts of other stuff online. But then there's people that are hell bent on wanting to get, the Stanford online certificate because it shows they've done something at, a well-renowned university that actually means something to them. Do employers actually take that seriously? I have no idea. I've literally no idea.
No,
what's the
I
difference?
don't think they do.
For me, when I do something, I do it because I'm
interested
and I'm gaining the knowledge. I don't need the certificate to tell me that I've got the knowledge.
Yeah, but we're in different places, right? Like presumably. I think, if I think about like my daughters, right, who are younger, one's 23, one's sort of close to 18. My 23-year-old came out of university, she's got a good degree, all the rest of it. But like she's in a marketplace where you are fighting for everything, right?
Well, that was the reason. So this was the reason why I built Gradlancer in the first
let's
place.
talk about that,
so
right?
I know you're going to go back to it at some point.
I do want to talk about it, right? So I want to talk about your thoughts on kind of the founder's playbook, if I can put it that way, right? So you built and sold a startup, right? Backed others, and now you're back in the founder's seat with Record. But what has changed since Gradlancer, right? Because both in how you build and in what you look for, right? Is the muscle memory the same, or does it feel like a different game entirely now?
I don't know. So Gradlancer, what Gradlancer was a student freelance platform. It was aimed at helping students find freelance work.
Had you just graduated?
No, that's the thing. So what was really annoying for me was the whole narrative. Well, I went to uni 2010 and graduated in 2014, but the whole narrative was you need to get experience before you can apply to great graduate jobs, and I just couldn't get my brain around that. So I got a great...
you need the experience to do the job, but you can't get the experience unless you get the job.
And that was just constant back then. So I did a sandwich year at Lenovo. So I was in sales at Lenovo for a year, learned a hell of a lot there. But when I was 6 months in, I was talking to my manager there, Sanjay, about this. I was like,
of course he was called Sanjay.
Yeah, he was. But 6 months in, and I was going, look, I feel like I'm wasting a year. Even though this is great, I almost don't want to go back and do my final year now because I'm now in the real world. That's all. I'm here doing it. Now I've got to go back to university for what reason? Yeah. And I couldn't get my head around that. So I remember went into a meeting room, wrote down 15, 16 businesses that I thought I could maybe start. And this was number 13. And after I came up with it, I literally wrote the name, drew a logo, everything. And called my friend Ben up, and I was just like, what do you think of this? He's a super entrepreneurial guy. And I called him up. I was like, what do you think of this? He was like, yeah, I love it. I was like, should we just do it? And so we went back into final year and we just started building it together, and then brought in my friend Anthony as well to help us. So then 3 of us co-founders building out this business. But I then taught myself like how to use Photoshop and built out a deck and all this sort of stuff. And then literally was going round London pitching a PDF that I'd built to a load of VCs, and somehow I got let in the door. I had nothing, like no tech experience. Like I drew out physically what the platform could look like and how it could all work. And I got
So you hadn't built anything. You just had like, this was idea stage. Literally.
This was literally idea stage, but I literally drew out the each version of the user flow. Literally like it was like 60 pages I'd drawn, and then built a nice Photoshop style deck. I was pretty proud of that, to be fair. And then took this to a load of VCs. Obviously none of them invested, but then took it to a family office, and they did. So we got 50 grand from them, and then took that out to a development agency who called Apple Cardo, who ended up building our MVP, and it worked incredibly well. They did an incredible job on it. And
you're the first person to have said an agency did an incredible job.
I was so impressed with them. Like, it's a husband and wife duo as well, based down south, and they were incredible. They're very like thorough about everything we were doing. Built that out. But then we did the things I don't know if many founders want to do this anymore, which is we were hustling in the sense of, right, we've got our platform now. Now we need to go get students on board before we then go and get companies in the local area.
Two-sided marketplace is the cold start problem, right?
Yeah. So we were going to freshers fairs up and down the country constantly, like as in sleepless nights. Like we're driving all over the country to then get students at freshers fairs sign up. I'd go to Nando's, Ben would go to Curry's, and we'd get them to just give us free gift cards to then use as part of a raffle to get students' email addresses and add them into our platform and we were doing that constantly. And then it would get to a point where, right, we've got the amount of students we want, which was like 2,000. We can now start to bring businesses on board. But then I then started talking to universities, and I was like, can you advertise us as a part of your jobs portal? Because then it twigged as I was talking to these unis, that actually if students graduate as a freelancer or as self-employed, when they graduate in employment. So as part of university statistics, phenomenal. Yeah. And that was then my pitch going into unis, was like, if you use us, we'll improve your stats. Yeah. And so they started to put us as part of their portal, like get a Gradlancer, freelance job. And we'd go to then all the local businesses in the area and start going like, look, you're a cafe, you need someone helping your marketing, like Instagram has just come out or whatever. You should get this student from this uni helping you and from the uni next door to you helping. And then it became like this whole business.
You say that founders don't do that sort of stuff. I'd agree. Like, so I think we've moved into a very much kind of build it and they will come attitude, right? And I think that's partly to blame is kind of social media, right? It just feels like, oh, well, everyone's building a business. It's really easy. Let's just go out and do it.
Yeah.
Like, but that is what you described is the right way. You literally got the business before you built the business, sort of thing. Well, kind of, right? So you built an MVP. Yeah.
But it was I validated it first.
You validated it.
Then built it. Then did the hard work of actually because it was a time, 2012, 2013. Like, you've got socials, but it wasn't as as easy.
Not everyone was on it, and
flipping difficult to get people to sign up to stuff.
Was Facebook already dying? I wonder.
Facebook was actually really good because I was a club promoter obviously at the time to supplement.
Of course you were.
But this is another thing. So
why did you say obviously?
But like
Punjabi club promoter, not in any way, shape or form like a cliche, but
I was in my gilet flyering and doing club nights. But you've got to remember, me, Ben, and Anthony, we were all club promoters because we were building the business in the day.
Were you all students at the time?
Yeah. So building the business in the day, we're studying, but then to pay for our lives, we're then doing club promoting in the evenings. Then once we graduated, it's the same thing because our investor at the time, he luckily owned a load of properties in Portsmouth where we went to university, and he gave us one of his properties, not for free, we still had to pay, but it was heavily subsidised, which was really nice of him. But then we've got to make money on the side. So in the day, we're building the business at his offices. Then in the evening, we're all working till 2, 3 in the morning to club promote to actually pay for our life. So we were doing 18-hour days any given day, and it was that was a life we were living for 3 years. It was absolutely incredible. Like the most energized I've ever felt. But yeah, we were living and breathing everything together. It was mad. And now Ant's off doing his own incredible like social media. He's got his own social media business, and Ben's like part exited the his SEO agency that he started with one of our other uni friends. So yeah.
But then you also ended up selling Gradlancer.
Yeah.
And then and now like you're back in fan. Like, so I'd love to understand what's changed. Like, what would you do differently, or would you do it the same? Because like what you've described is actually what I think many founders would benefit from doing.
I don't know what I'd do differently. Sorry, I don't know if what's changed is technology, and the way you build businesses all changed in terms of how easy it is to actually do now. Yeah. In terms of what I've done differently is given our investors less equity in the beginning.
Yep, sure.
Like we made some bad decisions. We were founders who had literally no idea what they were doing, but we made some incredible connections, incredible networks, loved every minute of it.
So you raised beyond the initial 50?
Yeah. Then we raised from him again
okay.
After we'd proved, the MVP, and like this was a very successful guy, like who invested in us, owns a business called Just Develop It, based in Fareham. Doing incredibly well, incredible business, got hundreds of staff. Like we were one of the first, I think, businesses outside of his portfolio that he hadn't already built himself. So he'd normally have the idea, build it, and then put a team around it, and then turn it into an actual business. And it was just constant. So we were one of the first external ones that came in, but he's ruthless. Like rightly so. He was incredible at what he'd done, and he wanted to see progress and really quick progress. I think we were one of the first businesses that were more like hands-on and less like marketing focused, and we were trying to build a two-sided marketplace, super difficult. But look, it was a great experience. We were then getting interest from universities in other countries who wanted to franchise what we were doing. And look, it could have turned into something completely different. But in the end, we exited. That exit, like, it's not a big amount of money in any way. It was just more of a case of getting the liabilities off us, and a business. We had like a load of admirers in the market. So we thought, look, we'll get one of these admirers, take it on, and hopefully they can breathe the life into it that it now needs after we move on.
And actually, I'm interested in that kind of decision tree, right? Like, is that because you'd taken it as far as you could go because you were young, you didn't have the experience, or was it because you didn't believe in the mission, or was it because you just thought it would have better chance of success?
No, so we actually look. So we went to Recruitment Entrepreneur, which was James Cahn's thing, like his accelerator, and Amy Golding at the time, who's now become Stephen Bartlett's CEO of his empire. We don't talk about Stephen Bartlett. Yeah, I know. But she's an incredible person. She actually became like a bit of a mentor for me, and like a someone who would always give me advice whenever I needed. But when she saw the terms of like what we'd signed up to, she wanted to come and talk to our investor and try and get him to renegotiate and whatever.
Interesting.
But when we saw that there was so much hype around us, we were really excited, in our own little bubble, obviously. But when we saw that actually she's even failing to make headway with him, just because of how he was he offered us more money, but the only way when we were at the end of our runway, this is when we'd been negotiating for 12 months about him reducing or bringing in other investors and blah blah blah. There was a chance for us to get more money from him, but at the age of 22, 23, essentially the money that we would get was like 450 grand, so 150 grand per founder we would be liable for if we didn't hit certain targets and certain goals. And I just looked at my co-founders and I was like, look, I'm happy to do this, but I've brought you two in and I don't feel comfortable that if this goes tits up in 6 months,
you're liable for 150 grand.
That we're all liable each for 150 grand at 23. I think we've now got to go look externally, and move it on. And that was basically it. And that was the turning point.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, so it comes back to your point around, and I think, again, lots of founders get this wrong, is really understand A, who you're taking money from, and B, on what terms you're taking it, right? Like, now, this is a very specific kind of like, okay, that sounds like I would not be advising a founder ever to take on that sort of liability. Because the reality is, like, these are startups. We know 90% of this stuff will fail. Like, you have a more than uneven chance that you're going to be on the hook for, essentially when you're a 23, 24-year-old grad, 3 years salary essentially, right? Like, and obviously you're not going to pay it all out of that. So you're going to be on the hook for 10 years trying to pay this.
Well,
down,
that was the point. We barely paid ourselves out of our own business, hence the club promotion stuff, because we wanted to earn money elsewhere. So we didn't actually touch the money that he'd put into the business anyway. We'd use that purely for business purposes. And so, it started to get pretty difficult for us. And so it's just it was a great decision that we made. We all ended on happy terms. And it was like, look, we tried. We learned a lot, and that's when then went to Dow Jones. I was like, look, let's try and get some corporate experience now and figure out what to do next.
Let's get a real job. No, so okay, so then fast forward to today, right? So, and you and I have talked about this again separately. Like, what is it? Because I think you were somewhat hesitant as to whether you wanted to do the whole founder journey again.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you laugh, but here you are, right? You're doing it again. Like, what's changed from that perspective, right? Because I would imagine one of the things is age. Like, I know, I tried to found my tech business, 4 years ago. I was in my 40s. Had I have tried to do it in my 20s, I think I would have had a very different experience and worldview and thought process. Not that in my 20s this would have even been a thing, really. And now, like, when I think about building business in the businesses that I do currently have and am building, one of the things I like is the fact that I can build them slowly and with control and with thought, right?
Yeah.
And I think often taking capital externally, and that's not necessarily like the only way to build a startup, right? But it pushes you down a pathway for sure, and it pushes you down one of the pathways it pushes you down is speed, right? Like, how do we do this quicker? How do we get to market faster? And that's where the mistakes come along, right? Like, because obviously in moving fast, you try things that don't work, or seem like they're working, but actually in the long term were the wrong decisions. So take me through your thought process. Like, how did that decision, work in your head? Like, how did you go from, okay, do I do this again, to actually,
number one was talking to my wife about that, like, as you do.
It's funny how that dynamic can change things. Yeah.
But then the other thing was talking to James. So my wife always jokes that she's in a three-way relationship because I'm constantly messaging James. But it's one of those things where what she wants ultimately from me, whatever I do next, is that I, number one, feel like I've got a purpose and I've got a drive and I've got the energy, and, not just for a couple of years, like 3, 4, 5 years. And we've got a nice, not even like.
And you're relatively recently married, is that right?
Yeah. 6 months ago. So it's
wow.
Yeah, very relatively recently.
Big pun.
But all she wants is that I've got a drive, that I'm excited, and it doesn't, affect my mental health or anything like that. That's all she cares about, basically. So that was a big one to start with. And then when I was speaking to James, it was like, right, we've got investment. We raised $5.5 million. And we've just signed up a client who's paid £2 million. And it was like, this thing's grown legs before I even can even wrap my head around it. Like, I'm still trying to learn, all the use cases for it and all sorts of stuff. And I was just like, this looks like a stupid opportunity for me to turn down. I know it's like, you're doing the founder thing again. And it sounds nuts because we've raised money and we've got a first client on board, but we're still building out so much more in the background of what this could be, that I'm like, this is way more exciting than I thought it could ever be. And that was a big part of it. It was actually, this could be a beast, basically. And I was like, when am I going to get this opportunity again? Do I go? I'd been interviewing, December, January time with a load of foundations and getting a load of interest. And I was like, I've got a lot of interest in my profile. Okay, cool. I am still wanted. And that kind of actually helped.
Yeah, the validation that if this doesn't work, I'll find something.
But it was just the validation that actually, no, I'm still wanted. So doing one more risky thing in terms of founding or joining James on the journey of starting Record from scratch, I was like, well, actually, that's quite... I'm not going to not have an opportunity in the future.
Hey guys, Jay and I had a massively extensive discussion, so we're going to split this into 2 episodes. You've just had to listen to part 1. Check out part 2 next week.